Alright, Freddy here. I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about the best ad strategy that online coaches need to be adopting in 2025. And if you don't start adopting this ad strategy from now, you will see the repercussions of the lack of trust that there is with the most common ad strategies that you're seeing nowadays. You know, funnels, VSLs, VSL call funnels, webinars, all the lot, right? All these common models, or these, popular ad strategies are starting to see a decline in trust, in conversion rate, all the lot, right? Unless you have super dialed in back-end systems, which honestly 99% of coaching businesses don't, your money is way better used or utilized in a more sophisticated, trust first ad strategy, which I'm going to be going through today. All right, so like in all my videos, right, I like to have my phone here with my notes, otherwise this video is probably going to be five times longer than it should be, right? Bottom line is, I usually just make my most valuable content when I know exactly what I'm going to say next. But most coaches, they just run their coaching business or coaching offer on a broken system. That's just something that is very prevalent in today's market, right? Because the funnels, the webinars, and random content blasts, they just don't create that much belief anymore. And if we're being honest, right, you probably felt that as well in your own coaching business. Your followers will engage with your content. They might respond to a few messages, but when it comes to booking calls, when it comes to getting over the line in terms of buying your program, they end up ghosting you and then just end up just watching your content or watching your stories on the sidelines, right? And deep down, all you want is a reliable framework that can return you consistent profits for your coaching business, right? And that's where the 3-bucket ad strategy comes in. This is what I like to call it, and it's an ad strategy that I have developed myself. So you probably won't find anything or any kind of content about this kind of ad strategy anywhere else. So make sure you stick around. Right? Because instead of hoping that someone stumbles from your content into a sales call, or someone watches your VSL and instantly feels like they want to buy, which, if we're being honest, in 2025, that is pretty much a pipe dream. This strategy literally engineers the exact trust sequence that takes someone from a complete stranger, to curious about your offer, to being a convinced buyer, right? So here's a quick rundown of how it all works. So bucket number 1 is cold. So bucket number 1 is where you start the belief conversation, okay? It's a short, sharp video that's designed to break false beliefs or false assumptions and filter by identity, right? You want to speak directly to your ICP, to your ideal client profile, and make it extremely clear who you're not speaking to, okay? And the goal here isn't to book calls instantly. It's literally just to have recognition, get people to see your face, right? And it's the moment, it's that moment when someone says, oh, okay, this sounds interesting. That's when you have them. That's exactly what we want. And the goal here, right, is to get people to visit your profile, visit your Instagram page, and basically for them to understand who you are, okay? Now, bucket number 2 is for your warm audience, or your more warm audience, right? Now, you have people coming to your profile from bucket number 1, right? And they're visiting your profile, watching your content, but you need to deepen that connection even further, okay? More pain, you need to drive more pain out of these call outs that you're making to your ICP, more pain driven call outs, more client stories, right? And proof that you've solved the exact problems that your ideal client is struggling with, okay? And the end goal of this layer, of this bucket, is to capture people that have visited your page but haven't yet followed, right? So when they do follow, you or your appointment setter can come in and start a conversation with them, okay? Now finally, bucket 3 is about nurture. This is where the repetition builds belief, okay? You run your best performing content as ads directly to the people who already know you, follow you, have liked your content, whatever it is, right? And here you're optimizing for throughput, so you're only spending money on people that are going to convert anyway, and leaving out the people who wouldn't convert. And then the content you put in bucket 3 just seals the deal, essentially, right? Objection handling, social proof stacking, and consistent presence. So by the time someone reaches your calendar, right, they already have the trust needed to, buy, because they've been following your content and watching you for months, or even weeks, or even days, right? That's how well it works. So that's a quick overview of how the whole 3 bucket ad strategy works. We're going to go into this a little bit deeper later on in the video, but for now that's just a quick overview of how it all works. And the best part is you don't need a massive ad budget to start this at all. You can actually test this system with as little as $15 to $30 a day, right? So that's about $450 to $900 a day, $900 a month. To finally stop guessing, start having a predictable, scalable ad strategy that can give you consistent profits without you having to build all these complex funnels and so on, right? So if you're watching this, you probably have realized, ads aren't the problem, funnels aren't the problem. It's just that you have a broken system, and this is exactly what this 3 bucket ad strategy is here to help with. Okay, so before you start running ads or anything like that, you need to have a few things in place. So the first thing is a good understanding of your ideal client avatar, or ideal client profile, as I like to call it, right? Your ICP. And the way you do that is by conducting market research. If you don't know how to conduct market research, I should have a video on my page explaining exactly how to conduct market research properly. If it's not out yet, look out for it. But you need to do proper market research, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to target the right people that you want. Half of the battle, I would say probably 3/4 of the battle with ads is getting the creative right? Making the right creative. And not only that, right? 3/4 of the battle with the creative is just getting the messaging right. If you can get the messaging right, if you can attack the right pain points, if you can speak in the right way, in the right tone, that speaks directly to who you want to target, your ideal client profile, that is pretty much 3/4 of the battle done already. The other behind the scenes stuff, that shouldn't be that complicated, okay? But yeah, this is one of the main important things. Making sure you have a very dialed in ideal client profile sheet, and it should explain who your client avatar is, your ideal client avatar is, what's the mass consensus belief trait, whatever it is that is keeping them stuck, what are some statistics and undeniable facts or numbers that prove that this common mass consensus is not the right way to go, what are the exact things that they're currently struggling with, what's a soft spot or sensitive topic that everyone in your ideal market thinks but never really says out loud, okay? Desires and goals, current roadblocks, all the different stuff, right? You want it all inside of here, all their objections, all their limiting beliefs, everything inside of here. And until you have that, you shouldn't run ads, okay? You shouldn't even create content before you have this sorted, but that's another topic for another day. Now, the second thing that you want to have, or the second thing that I always make sure of before I ever start running ads for anyone that I work with, is the numbers. The numbers need to be dialed in, or not dialed in, but they need to be thought of beforehand, okay? So let's say you have a ad budget of $900. Ad budget of $900, so about $30 a day. Let's say you're spending $30 a day on ads. And let's say your offer price, let's keep it at $4,000, alright? Let's keep it there, right? I'm always going to run the numbers and look at what exact numbers we need to be hitting in order to get the results that we want, okay? So, cost per follower, I always keep this at around $3 because this is pretty standard. Cost per call, whenever I'm launching a new ad campaign, I always put this at 40, right? At $40 is pretty standard. Qualified call rate, I always put this at around 60% because it is pretty standard as well. Sometimes for some markets, if I know it a little bit better, I might put 50 or maybe 70, but I usually just keep it at 60, just to kind of pre-frame what the numbers should look like. Qualified call show up rate, so show up rate to the final call in the 2-call close sequence, it's around 70 to 90%. I like to keep it on the lower end, just to be pessimistic. Sales close rate, keep it between 25 and 30, so I usually put 25. Revenue to cash collected ratio, usually put at 0.5, so half the money, 50% of the total price of the program is what we collect up front. Revenue share payments. This is, for people that work with me. I take a revenue share, and I work pretty much performance based. So that would be something that would be involved. But for most of you, that wouldn't really apply. So you just take that out. Unless you have an appointment set that you're giving revenue share to, but if it's just you, just take that out. And set rate commissions, you can either take that out, but if you have an appointment setter, you can add like 2.5 to 5%, right? Let's say you do have a setter. Actually, let's say you have a setter in place, right? Let's say you give them 5% revenue share, and maybe like, I don't know why. Yeah, sorry, my camera just started turning off. But let's say you give them 5% revenue share, and $10 per book call, right? For example, the amount of book calls here would be about 22. So book calls be 20. Okay, and let's say your refund rate is 1%, right? Usually it's a lot less than that. It doesn't even come to 1%, but let's just say for number's sake, right? So in this scenario, right? In this scenario, hold on. Yeah, I messed up the numbers there. Okay, so 5%, good. Right. So here, number of book calls on this ad spend, $900 with a $40 cost per call. You're booking about 22 calls, right? And if I'm being completely honest, one of the main metrics that I always try to optimize is cost per call, because the cost per call actually has, of every other metric that you're looking at when it comes to scaling with ads or anything like that, cost per call is always the most pivotal metric that when you change it even by like a couple dollars, it will vastly increase your profits, because you're just getting on more calls, there's more opportunities for you to sell, right, so on and so forth, right? But I always keep it at around $40 to $50, just to be safe, right? Because that's something we would strive for anyway. So $40 to $50 per call, spent per call. So that would be around 22 calls booked, and at a 60% qualification rate, it'll be about 13 qualified calls out of those 22, right? And then out of those 13, 9 should show up. Okay, at least 9 should show up with a show up rate of 7, right? And then with a close rate of 25%, so 1 in 4 sales closed should be about around 2 sales closed. So that leaves you with a net clients of around 2 after refunds, which is pretty much nothing. But yeah, so around 2 clients, and gross revenue from $900 ad spend would be 9.3k. Cash collected, given we're accounting for a 0.5%, a 0.5 revenue to cash collected ratio, so about 50% revenue to cash collected ratio. So 50% of the gross revenue, we're saying that, or basically accounting for everyone basically paying in a split pay, right? There are obviously going to be people that will pay up front or pay all in full. That's definitely possible, but in this scenario, we're just optimizing for split pays, right? So gross revenue, projected revenue 9.3k, projected cash collected 4.6k, net cash collected after ad spend would be 3.7k. So your revenue share and total commissions that you pay out would be 454. Your personal profit, so your personal profit will be 3.3k, right? And then that means you have a cost per client of $384, which is actually pretty good. ROAS will be 5.2 on cash collected, which is actually really, really good. ROAS on revenue, total revenue is 10.4 again, which is pretty good. Your personal ROI after all expenses will be 3.7x. So after spending $900 on ads, you've 3.7x your personal profit, or your personal return on investment after all expenses, all payroll, right? Which is really, really good. The net profit margin net profit margin. So the net profit after ad spend, the margin on that, so that's 81%, and then your personal profit margin after all ad spend, all payroll, is 71%, right? And then you just need 0.45 sales to break even on your ads, which is a very, very good balanced set of results, set of outputs here, right? Now, obviously, these numbers are not always 100% accurate, but we try to be as accurate as possible and try to be as pessimistic as possible to account for the worst case scenarios, right? So this could very well be a lot better if you know, depending on your offer, depending on what you sell. This could be a little bit worse, who knows, right? But we always try to make it as realistic as possible. I never had it where it's just like completely wrong. That's never really happened before, because we actually focus and prioritize being pessimistic a little bit at least. So yeah, those are two things that I always look for or always do before I ever start running any ads. Make sure that the ICP, market research, is dialed in, and then also we understand the numbers and what numbers we need to hit in order to make the money that we want to make. Okay, so those are the first two things. Another thing would be, you know, obviously having your YouTube content posted, having, you know, short form content posted, all that stuff, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so the next part before you start running your ads is to have the script written, have the script down, right? So here's kind of framework that I like to use for the bucket number 1 ad, bucket number 2, and bucket number 3 ad, right? So I'm just going to start off with bucket number 1. So with bucket number 1, with the goal being you getting as many eyeballs and traffic, you know, as much traffic as possible to your Instagram page. With that being the goal, you want to kind of take a more surface level approach, right? To, you know, you're not trying to, you know, tack on the deepest, darkest desires and pains just yet. You're just trying to get people aware of you, get your face out there as much as possible, and get as many, you know, qualified users or qualified leads to your Instagram profile as possible, right? There's no kind of, you know, hard CTA in this ad. It's more so at the bottom when you ask to follow them. So yeah, I kind of say it here, right? You want to be speaking more towards the monkey brain, right? The monkey brain, the surface level outcome or pain, right? So for example, if you're going after, let's use for this example for the scripts, let's use people in real estate, right? They're trying to, you know, build a real estate business, maybe like Airbnb, for example. Let's go with Airbnb, okay? A monkey brain surface level outcome for someone looking to get into Airbnb would be generational wealth, passive income, you know, living life on their own terms, that kind of thing, right? Very surface level outcomes, okay? And it just gets them interested. So an example of a script that I, you know, would use for this top of funnel ad, or this bucket 1 ad, is insert result as XYZ ICP in time frame without common roadblocks. So it could be like making $10,000 a month in passive profit, in passive income as a 9-to-5 worker in 6 months without having to quit their job, right? Or without having to, you know, do whatever the common roadblock is for that ICP, right? Getting to 10K a month in passive income as a 9-to-5 worker in 6 months without having to quit their job. This is what insert client name was able to achieve despite not having despite only having a couple $1,000s to invest, or whatever common obstacle that, you know, they went through, right? And then you can be like, and no, he or she didn't have to, you know, do common roadblock or common struggle that the ICP goes through. So I know he or she didn't have to spend $10,000s on down payments in order to make that $10,000 a month in passive income, right? And then after that, you can play a clip of a testimonial or a client testimonial sharing, like of the client sharing their experience and results, saying their name clearly, right? So it can be like a clip of your successful client saying, yeah, been working with, and then they would say your name for XYZ amount of time, and then a clip sharing their results of them, or them saying their results, and just appreciating you, shouting your praises, so on and so forth, right? So that just adds credibility. Okay, so and then after that you'll say, so if you're a 9-to-5 worker that wants to make 6 figures a year in passive income with real estate or with Airbnb, and you're sick and tired of having to save up for years to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a down payment, click the button below to go to my Instagram page, give me a follow, and watch as much content, or watch as much of my content as possible, because there I share the exact, and then you say your unique mechanism name, the exact passive profits framework, which is actually the name of the unique mechanism for one of my clients, Matthew, who has an Airbnb offer. The exact passive profits framework that has helped XYZ client name and several other 9-to-5 workers just like him or her see similar results. That would be a very good, like, top of funnel, monkey brain, surface level, outcome driven top of funnel ad, right? Because you're speaking towards their like surface level outcome, maybe making 10K a month, right? Something like that. They want to make passive income, and you're talking towards like the surface level, like obstacles as well, right? This is to be served to a broad audience, so it does its job quite well. Now, the middle of funnel, this is bucket number 2. Since you're speaking towards people that have already come towards your page, they've already visited your profile, and you already know now they are your ideal client, or most are going to be your ideal client. You want to separate people even more, right? Because you went quite broad with the first one. You want to separate people even more and filter out people even more, and speak towards more deeper level pain and outcomes, right? Deeper level desires. Speak more towards, instead of the monkey brain, speak towards the frontal cortex, right? The more logical, the more emotional side, right? Of the brain, right? So here's an example of a script that you'd use for this, right? So if you're ICP, and then you say your ICP for this, we'll stick to the same ICP, same offer, right? Airbnb, businesses for 9-to-5 workers looking to get into real estate, whatever, right? If you're a 9-to-5 worker and you're trying to get into real estate, to so you can make passive income and create generational wealth for you and your family, but rising housing costs and cost of living seems to make it impossible for you to get there, you're not alone, because I've been where you are right now. Okay, and then you just share a little bit about your story, make it very brief, like don't go into too much. Share a little bit about your story and relate it to the desire and roadblocks of your ICP, or just the roadblocks, to the roadblocks of your ICP. And then you say, but then I discovered an incredibly simple framework called unique mechanism name. You can insert your unique mechanism name here, which allowed me to go from where you were before to where you are right now, a desired situation, in time frame, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is. Make sure the desired situation, old situation, like make sure the language you use here is very targeted to the ICP and their language that they speak, right? So relates more. And then you say, and yes, I did it without whatever common roadblock they typically face. So with 9-to-5 workers and getting into Airbnb or getting into real estate is, and yes, I did it without spending tens of thousands of dollars on a down payment for a house before ever seeing any profit, right? And then you go into your call to action, right? This call to action is a little further up, right, in the video, right? And then you'd be like, now if you're XYZ ITP, and you want a full in-depth breakdown on exactly how I was able to use unique mechanism name and insert that to be able to, make XYZ amount of money passively, and be able to do all these things within my life, whatever it is, without common roadblock, click the button below to go to my Instagram page, give me a follow, and watch as much of my content as you can. And then you can also, in the video, in the edit, when you're editing the video, or you have like an editor, I'd recommend like getting a professional editor to edit your ads, but that's another topic for another day. You can get the editor to highlight the YouTube link in your bio, right? The YouTube link to your high level breakdown video in your bio, your YouTube video, your free course, whatever it is. And because there I don't hold back on any details on how I and several other 9-to-5 workers just like you have been able to break free from 9 to 5, not have to work as much anymore, have the choice to be able to do what we want and live life on our own terms, whatever it is, right? And then you can be like, take client name for example. This is where you share like social proof, whatever, right? Take client name for example, insert that client name. A 9-to-5 worker who went from old situation to desired situation in time frame using unique mechanism, or another client you can mention who was able to go from old situation to desired situation in time frame. So if you're ICP 9-to-5 worker and you're sick and tired of whatever common roadblock they usually face being the reason why you can't live desired reality, make sure you go to my Instagram and give me a follow, right? Simple as that. And then obviously bucket number 3, this is like just a short form content piece that handles a common objection and has the CTA to a YouTube video. That's pretty much it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. When it comes to actually creating the video, I would just film it, and then I would recommend spending maybe $30 to $50 per ad, getting a video editor to edit the videos, because it's a good first impression. And then the whole idea with when I was talking about highlighting your YouTube video in your bio, like for example, if I go to one of my clients, Matthew, their profile. And another thing I should mention is how to optimize your profile for these ads as well. So a good way to optimize your profile is obviously keywords inside the name here, clear profile picture, social proof, who helps, so on and so forth. A conversion keyword, right? For Matthew here is B&B, and then a description, short description of your YouTube free course or high level breakdown, which he has over here, right? And that just links to a YouTube video, so when people come to your page they can see, oh look, this is how you're able to get this result, watch your YouTube video, get warmed up, so on and so forth. And then also a good way to optimize your profile is to have your highlights in check, client results, social proof, behind the scenes stuff about your story, more behind the scenes stuff, right? Show you're a human. And then your profile, your front facing profile should be optimized. I see way too many people, this is a side note, I see way too many people that don't have a good front facing profile. You see this profile grid thing? This is what people see when they visit your profile from a profile visit ad, right? They don't see your Reels tab. But for some reason, I always see people, or I see multiple times, maybe multiple times a week and sometimes multiple times a day, where I see people, like I just like see these profile visit ads, I just check out their profile and I'm like, they barely have anything on their front facing profile. They might have a few lifestyle pictures, but not barely anything to kind of give the value that was promised on the ad. You have to realize that with traffic, objective, and profile visit ads, these leads, they're not like quote unquote high quality, right? They're not specifically people that Facebook has tagged as being people that stick around for stuff long term, or stick around to check stuff out. It's just traffic. That's all it is, just traffic, right? So these people don't know you, don't really care about who you are, right? depending on your messaging, maybe, and your story, maybe they do care a little bit, but for the most part they don't, right? So you want to make sure that your first impression when they come into the profile is they have a bunch of stuff that they can consume already. Most people are not going to, especially if you're targeting like an older audience, which most people that I work with or I speak to are, because those are the people that can actually afford to pay high ticket, right? Those older audiences, they don't know that they need to go to a Reels tab to see more Reels, right? Most are just going to see the profile, they'll see there's barely anything on it, and they're just going to click off, right? They're not going to pay any mind to it. So yeah, like, you want to have your profile optimized as well, okay? So yeah, that's pretty much it for the scripts and the profile optimization. Alright, so this is a video of me going through, breaking down the 3 bucket ad strategy. And as an example here, I'm going to be using my client Anya's ad account to kind of demonstrate all the 3 buckets. Okay, so going straight into it, right? What you'll see here is we don't have a bunch of different campaigns. Alright, so the main thing that I've found with online coaches, people just trying to make money with advertising or paid ads, is that they'll use like a bunch of different ad strategies, a bunch of different ad campaigns, just a ton of stuff that they don't need to. I'll go as far as saying that if you're making less than 50 to 100 grand a month, right, you should not have a million different ad campaigns, right? Usually 1 or 2, and 3 in this instance will be more than enough to actually make the money you want to make. But yeah, just to go right into it, I'm going to explain what each one of these campaigns do, what they mean, and how to kind of implement them to get the results you want. So first campaign, bucket number 1. What I like to call this bucket, right, is the top of funnel bucket, okay? Warm audience building. So essentially, the theory behind the first bucket is you're basically shifting a belief, right? If you've watched my videos about top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel content, you know that top of funnel content is all about belief shifting. It's all about shifting a common belief that people in your audience have, and then making it so that they are interested, and basically putting out that message at scale is what I'm trying to say, right? Putting that message out to a really broad audience and shifting beliefs at scale. So this is what the bucket 1 strategy is for. Okay, so bucket number 1 is a profile visit campaign, right? So I'm just going to go back up here and show here ad set budget optimization. The campaign objective is traffic, right? Traffic, and then you go down, and then the traffic is sent to an Instagram or Facebook page. Here obviously we have the Instagram profile ticked, we don't have the Facebook profile ticked, right? But yeah, this is kind of like the setup for that, traffic objective to an Instagram profile. Then we have a daily budget. Obviously right here is 12. When you're starting out, like, I always recommend starting out with a budget of like $15 to $30 a day. That's a good budget to start with. But yeah, we have 12 over here, and I'm going to explain like the different budget allocations between each bucket. But we have $12 here, and then we have all this set up here with the custom audiences. Now I don't want to kind of go back because it's just a pain to read to do it again, but essentially when you come down here and you come down to audience, what Facebook or what Meta will get you to do is they'll get you to use their like advantage audience, which is really annoying. And right here you might have like this little box which won't be as big as this. It won't have as many targeting options. So what you basically want to do is you want to go onto that, and then you want to click use original audience. Okay, use original audience. Because if you use the Advantage Plus stuff, Advantage Plus is basically Facebook's way of, trying to lower costs as much as possible. With their own little AI stuff, right? Their machine learning stuff. And, at face value, that sounds amazing. That sounds like a great deal, right? You're getting cheaper results, for the same amount of money, right? But what you have to realize is that with Advantage Plus, in order to get those cheaper results, Facebook or Meta's, artificial intelligence, it will go outside of the constraints that you've put inside of your targeting. It'll go outside of those constraints to get those cheaper results, right? Cheaper results don't always mean good results, right? So you obviously want to have the cheapest results possible, but you want to make sure those results are within the constraints of the targeting that you want. Because if it's outside of that, Facebook will see that, if you're going with Advantage Plus, Facebook will see that, or Facebook's AI will see that, and it will continue going after those type of people that are outside of the constraints and targeting that you want, because they're getting you cheaper and cheaper results, if that makes sense. So the last thing that you want is to do any of like the Advantage Plus stuff, right? Because it'll just be a waste of money, from what I've seen. So yeah, make sure you click use original audience. Don't use Advantage Plus audience targeting. And once you've done that, your audience targeting should look something like this. Now, when it comes to locations, I like usually it's not as complicated as this, right? Usually it's not as many countries as this, but we found like this stack of countries is usually pretty good for this particular offer. For most offers, like I would say like 9 times out of 10, for most offers, you'll be good doing UK, US, Canada, Australia, and maybe parts of Europe, right? You'll be good doing like the big four countries that I just mentioned. And yeah, there'll be more than enough people, that have the funds and everything like that to pay for whatever you do high ticket. But every single time without fail, I always exclude these areas. So Africa, Asia, Central America, Oceania, and South America, right? Now, before you call me a raging racist, right, there's a reason for this. It's because with ads, you want to maximize your ad dollars as much as possible, right? And the way that you do that is by making sure all the ad dollars that you're putting towards, acquiring new clients is spent on people that are actually going to buy, that have the highest likelihood of buying, or, highest likelihood of being the type of people that you want to speak to. So without kind of me going too much into it, if we're being completely honest, people from these parts of the world typically, like 9 times out of 10, will not have the financial means to pay high ticket. And that is what it is. Right? It is what it is, right? It's obviously unfortunate, but if you are spending money to go to these places where, like, I'm not saying there aren't going to be people that are able to afford what you sell high ticket. That's totally fine. I know that like there definitely is people that are able to from these areas, but the likelihood of someone coming through from an ad being able to afford it from these areas is much lower than the places you do want to target, like Canada, UK, Ireland, the US, Australia. You get what I'm saying? So that's kind of the reason for that. So age, the age that you target is very dependent on like who you're trying to target in terms of demographics. So if you're trying to target like corporate workers, typically you want someone that is a little bit older, a little bit more established in their career, right? Like we do here with Anya. If you want someone that is like a little bit younger, you can do younger. If you want people that are like a more of a range, you can do a more of a range, right? This is just like based on the ICP that you have and who you're really trying to target. Gender, I usually do it all genders, unless the offer is like specifically for a specific gender. And then interest targeting, right? So this is probably like the only Advantage Plus thing that I entertain, because it's like usually when you don't have these interests inside the interest targeting, usually you get shown to like people that don't really want to see your ad, and it can result in like you getting a lot of hate comments. I don't know why, but yeah, you wanna go broad for sure. You wanna go broad, but not too broad to where there's no like interest targeting. If you have a larger budget, right? If you have a larger spending budget, maybe you're spending like, you know, $200 to $1,000 plus a day, right? Fair enough. Like go ahead and you know, get rid of interest targeting. If you want to go that broad, even then I probably would still like say, you know, do interest targeting. But if you're spending a lot of money every day, then fair enough, like you don't really have to do interest targeting if you really want to go that broad. Obviously just make sure your messaging is on point, and then obviously make sure, you know, your backend systems are dialed in. But that's another topic for another video, right? But for most of you watching, 99% of you watching, you're going to have to use interest targeting. And interest targeting, the way you've seen it, is not real, right? You don't want to have 5 different interests and then click define further and have even more interests, right? 2 to 4 interests inside the interest targeting section is more than enough, right? Again, you want to keep it broad, but not too broad, okay? So now the next part is placements. So there's a difference between the two. So there's advantage placements and then manual placements. Like we spoke about before, advantage placements will just put you in, you know, the place where it's going to get you the cheapest results, which, like we've established, isn't actually the best way forward. So what you actually want to do is click on manual placements. I don't really click on this, to be honest with you. I leave all devices, and then I put on Instagram, right? Unless you have a following on Facebook, and have like, you know, systems in place on Facebook, like I always just go for Instagram. Instagram's just the easiest place to you know, run a lot of these backend systems. But yeah, I stick to Instagram most of the time. And you know, in terms of the placements, I have Instagram feed, Instagram profile feed, Instagram Explore Home, Instagram Stories, Instagram Reels, Instagram Profile Reels. Okay, so all these, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. Like all the other stuff I just uncheck, because again, if you leave it on, like Facebook is just gonna go with those, and then if they give you cheaper results and you don't necessarily want people to go there, right, or come from there, you're just going to end up, you know, spending money on placements that don't really bring you the right type of people or bring you that many results. Okay, so yeah, in terms of languages, yeah, there's another one. Just do it for whatever language you speak with your clients in, right? Obviously for most of you watching, it's going to be English, right? So you just put the language that you have or you speak to with your clients in here. Okay, now to go down to the ad creative. Okay, it's gonna load. Okay, so the ad creative, essentially with the bucket 1 ad, right? The bucket 1 ad is supposed to be like, it's not supposed to get people to convert or do anything straight away. All it's supposed to do is it's supposed to basically shift their belief, right, and get them to do something very, very easy. Okay, basically shift the belief and provide value, and then get them to do something easy. So with us, or what that means in terms of ecosystem, in terms of the trust-based digital ecosystem, is getting them to visit your profile and follow the page, right? You have a CTA, or you always have like a call to action in the video, in this top of funnel video, to follow your page, right? That's going to be the call to action. And we don't actually like get people to follow like straight away. It's not like we're not like directly telling people or like pushing people to follow straight away. We're basically just, you know, providing a lot of value and shifting a belief in a way where it's like people want to naturally go to your profile and see more of what you have to offer in terms of content, right? Now the thing is here, you'll have a follow me CTA at the end, right, near the end or near the middle, but it won't be like pushed at the start or anything like that. That's what bucket 2 is for. I'm going to get into that soon, but the thing you want to remember for the bucket 1 ad is we're just shifting a belief, providing value on that, and making it natural for people to be like, oh, okay, this sounds interesting. I like what this person has to say. I'm going to go to their Instagram profile, see what other content that they make. Now, people will do one or two things, right? They'll follow, right? They'll either follow your page, or they'll go onto your profile and they will like maybe watch some of your content and then not follow, right? So some of these people might follow, some of these people might not. Now, the question is, how do you actually like, you know, follow up or retarget the people that haven't followed your page from this first ad? And that's a good question, because that's what bucket number 2 is for. Let me just go to bucket number 2. Okay, so let's go to bucket number 2. This is what bucket number 2 is for. Right, so bucket number 2 again is a traffic campaign to an Instagram profile. Okay, and you know, budget here very small, right? But I'm gonna explain it even more here. Right, so with bucket number 2, what we're doing, the whole idea of bucket number 2 is you want to think about it like this, right? When you think about the 3 bucket ad strategy, you want to think of like, okay, this is the way you want to look at it, right? Bucket number 1 is like a very wide bucket. It catches a lot of water, okay? As in people coming through your ad and seeing your ad, right? It's a very wide bucket, catches a lot of water. But it has a small little hole at the bottom, which drips water to the second bucket under it, which is a little bit more narrow. But it also has another bucket, another hole at the bottom of the bucket, right? So water is being drip fed to bucket number 2, and bucket number 2 is catching that water, but it's also drip feeding the water to bucket number 3 as well, which is a little bit more narrow, right? But it doesn't have a hole at the bottom, right? That's the only bucket that doesn't have a hole at the bottom. I'm gonna explain that a little bit more later, but just keep that in mind because it'll make sense in a second. Because all that we're doing here with bucket number 2 is we're retargeting people that have seen your bucket 1 ad but haven't followed your page. Because what happens when someone follows your page with the digital ecosystem, we then get a setter or appointment setter to reach out to the new follower, right? Start a conversation with them, and that is essentially how we book our appointments. So followers are basically like our leads that we reach out to. So the way that you maximize the number of followers that you get for every dollar that you spend is by retargeting people that haven't followed you from the original bucket 1 ad, right? Because it's natural, not everyone's going to follow. So we want to retarget these people, basically exclude people that have already followed you, but include people that have visited your profile. And I like to do it in the last 365 days, right? Obviously, make sure you're using original audience again. Include the countries that you need and exclude the countries that you don't need. Age, all that stuff is the same, right? Make sure it's the same throughout all the different buckets. And then obviously manual placement is the same throughout. And then on the bucket 2 ad is very similar, but it's a little bit different as well, right? The bucket 2 ad is very, very like pain driven. It's very pain driven rather than value driven. It's pain driven and it's very much outcome driven as well, speaking directly to your ICP. And then it pushes heavily for people to follow you, to follow your page, right? So you're like actively or indirectly telling people, if you want XYZ result, click the button below, visit my profile, follow my page, and watch my content, because there I share content on how to achieve XYZ result, right? So before, people might have clicked on your page, they might thought, okay, this person's interesting, and maybe their dog barked, or maybe like their child started crying or something like that, and they, or work called or something like that, and they just couldn't follow. People are like very, very like, finicky like that sometimes, but what are you gonna do apart from doing what you need to do, which is retargeting these people? So by retargeting these people, you want to make sure that you're actively telling them to do what you want them to do, right? Because they've already seen your bucket 1 ad. Chances are they've already seen your content, so you're just following up with them, retargeting them with this ad, and tell them to follow you, right? A very, very simple ask, and you're basically framing it in a way where it's going to benefit them to get them the certain result that they want. And obviously that comes in market research, you understanding your market, everything like that, to know exactly what your ICP wants. Okay, so yeah, the third bucket, the final bucket at the bottom, is bucket number 3. And I like to call this the hammer them indoctrination layer. Now, all this layer is, right? All this layer is a layer where people come to, or like thinking about the 3 buckets again. The top bucket's most wide, second bucket's a little bit more narrow, and then the third bucket's a little bit more narrow as well. That third bucket, it doesn't have a hole at the bottom, because we're catching all of the water from the top 2 buckets, right? And we're basically keeping them in that loop, keeping them in the stream of different water droplets. And to put that in words you can understand, what I mean by that is, when someone comes through to your page, when someone likes your content, when someone visits your page, when someone follows your page, when someone engages with your content, the last thing that you want is for them to just forget about you, right? Because that's something that can happen if they're not continuously keeping up with your content, right, and visiting your page, which most people aren't. So what we do here is we basically drip feed all these people that have engaged with your page, right? So yeah, followed your page or visited your page, right? We basically target all these people with new content, right? So we have one ad set inside of this bucket, inside this campaign, and we're basically putting in some content that has performed well on your page, right? And we're pushing out even more. The call to action on these isn't to follow you or anything like that. It's to comment a keyword, right? Comment a keyword for a YouTube video, for them to then get an automatic DM, ManyChat DM, to a YouTube video, and then continue down the middle of funnel, and then finally to the bottom of funnel, right? So they see this top of funnel content piece. We're not trying to get them to do anything apart from comment a CTA for the YouTube video for them to watch for a certain outcome. Okay, so again, this is like literally just artificially pushing out the top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel strategy, where you're shifting a common belief in the top of funnel video here. It's just a regular reel, by the way. It's a regular Instagram reel. You're shifting common belief, and you're saying, okay, comment the word. If you comment the word XYZ keyword, I'll send you a full YouTube video for free, explain this concept in more detail. Then they watch the YouTube video, they get more warm, so on and so forth. You know the whole story, right? So this is what bucket 3 is for. And the way it gets pushed out is, this is actually an engagement campaign. This is an engagement campaign, right? The objective is engagement, and then the conversion location or the conversion type is video views. We're maximizing or optimizing for through plays. Now, what are through plays? Through plays are basically anyone that watches more than 15 seconds of your video. Okay, more than 15 seconds of your video, meaning we're optimizing for people to watch the vast majority of your video that you put in this layer, meaning that the people that like your content and engage with you the most, they're gonna be pushed even more down the pipeline. Okay, so if you're thinking, okay, this might be a little bit expensive, you'd be wrong, right? Because with through plays, I'm going to show you the cost per through play here. You can get through plays for literally a fraction of a penny. Cost per result here, a fraction of a penny, right? This is why we can spend literally $5 a day or £5 a day, targeting people in the bottom of funnel or the bucket 3, and then still get people to watch the content, right? Watch the videos, because it's just a through play, right? So, if we're getting someone to watch 15 seconds or more of a video for a fraction of a penny, spending £5 to £10 or 5 to 10% of the ad budget is more than enough for what you need. Okay, so yeah, this basically explains the entire 3 bucket ad strategy. And just for like a budget allocation, what you typically want to do, and with this we were kind of testing a different budget allocation, but typically, right, for most of you watching, what you want to do in terms of bucket allocation and budget allocation, is for bucket number 1, you want to give it 60 to 65% of your total ad budget. Okay, bucket number 2, you want to give it 25 to 30% of your total ad budget, because for bucket number 1, you are going for the broadest audience. So you're going for people that don't necessarily know who you are, right? For bucket number 2, you're going for people that have visited your profile, so that audience is going to be smaller, more narrow, and you want to have less of a spend go to that because you don't want to tire out that audience, right, too much. And then bucket number 3, you want to allocate between 5 and 10% of your ad budget, of your total ad budget, because with through plays, there's no direct conversion tracking with that. Like, it doesn't directly contribute to conversions, right? So while it is a very, very crucial layer, you don't want to give it too much ad spend, especially with how cheap you can get through plays. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole explanation with the entire 3 bucket ad strategy. And I wanted to just touch on one last thing as well. With bucket number 3, you want to have how it's just reels and stuff from your page. You want to have only like 5 to 10 reels inside of here, because again, like, through plays are very, very cheap to get. So you don't need to have that many ads inside of here, but you want to have a good amount so that people are like rotating between each of the ads. I'll share one last thing as well before we end off. On this ad strategy and this targeting, if you're raising your ad spend, if you're pushing even more ad spend, one thing that you can move to make sure that people don't see the same ads or the same videos over and over again is you can end up excluding people that, again, are your customers, number 1, but also people that have seen the specific ad, right? So you'd make an ad set for each one of these ads, and then you would exclude someone that has watched 3 seconds or more of that specific video, right? So they don't get fed the same video over and over again. So that's something you can do. Typically when it's a smaller ad spend, you don't really need to bother. Like anything under, if you're spending anything under like $200 a day on your bucket number 3, meaning that you're probably spending, you know, over $2,000 a day on your ads. If you're spending any less than that, you don't have to worry about that. But if you're spending more than that, yeah, you probably need to kind of, you know, allocate or exclude different people from or watching, you know, these ads over and over again. But that was the last thing I wanted to mention. And yeah, that pretty much sums up the whole ad strategy. Again, very simple, very, very simple. If you want, you know, you can watch this video again to kind of refresh your brain on how it all works. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Alright, so you made it to the end of the video. I appreciate you watching to the end, and I hope you found a lot of value from what I shared today. Right, so if you like my approach and you genuinely want to understand how you can apply some of the frameworks and the principles that I mentioned in my videos for your own business, and you know, see if it would even work, my Instagram is linked in the description. Feel free to shoot me a follow and DM me the word ecosystems, because when you DM me the word ecosystems, I'll be able to understand that you want more context around how some of the frameworks and principles that I mentioned in my videos can be better applied to your own business. And if you've done that already, feel free to subscribe to the page if you haven't already, and like the video or not, I don't really mind. But all that to say, I post weekly videos just like these around how online coaches just like yours can scale to 20 to 50k a month in take-home profit without any sort of complex funnels. Just a simple offer, a simple strategy, and simple fulfillment.